Welcome home, my little hellhounds. Tonight we have 3 scary stories to sink our hellish teeth into. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Also, if you like this content, then don't forget to subscribe and drop a like and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. Now, let's get right into it. Good boy, posted by Sucking God's Finger. Oh master, please wake up. Oh geez. Okay, I'll lay here next to you. Too bad you wouldn't teach me how to use the phone. I saw it on the TV, but you said I wasn't allowed to touch it, so I won't. I'll be a good boy. You're not breathing all too well, but I'm sure the men in black will come soon with their lights. They always come when it gets too loud, but this time they'll be surprised when I answer the door, because my wonderful master is sleeping, of course. I remember when you plucked me from my mother, you said, she's dying anyway, and threw some of your treasure at my mother's daddy. Oh, how you cared for me. I finally had a bed and food every day. It was wonderful. I know I wasn't too good at playing, and you made sure I knew that, but I was really good at protecting. Oh, I was a good boy when it came to that. All those nights being locked away when I was being a bad boy finally paid off. It made me sad when you'd call me a bad boy, brought out the chain, then locked me up. When you noticed I was getting bigger, whenever you put me away for a few days, I could see you getting happy again. It brought joy to my ears when you'd call me a hulking freak or a big dummy, because I knew you liked how strong I was. Remember when you used to bring other pets home? Oh, you would get so mad at me when you'd come home and they'd be sleeping. Sometimes I'd play too rough with them, so I understand why you got mad at me. I know you gave away your treasure for them. Other times I had to show them I was your favourite. They think they can come in to your home and tell me what to do. I show my teeth and rip them apart. Then I yelled, only the master tells me what to do. I told them, and when you started making me work, I showed you all you need is me. Then those stupid nosy fucks see me in the window. I'm so sorry, master. I know you told me to stay away from the window, but the sun, it felt so good. I won't do it again though, I promise. When I seen them see me, I showed my teeth and told them to fuck off. As I clawed at the windows, I figured I'd scare them off, but the stupids came over later instead. I'm so sorry, master. Why don't you let me answer the door, master? You would have had time to grab your boom. Instead, you hit me with the chain until I disappeared in my head. So when I was able to be me again, it was too late. You had already locked me up and opened the door, and they were ready. They made so many holes in your body, Master, that I had to plug them all. I'm sorry, Master. You had already locked me up and opened the door, and they were ready. They made so many holes in your body, Master, that I had to plug them all. I'm so sorry, Master. I was hoping they wouldn't find me and just leave us alone. I'm glad they did though. At least I won't get in trouble for breaking your things again, Master. I promise it wasn't me. They were stupid. They opened the door and I showed them my teeth again, yelling, "Fuck off." They thought if they set me free I would be nice. They asked me if I wanted to play. I cannot lie, Master, but I got excited when one of them called me a big motherfucker. But it wasn't the same as when you say it. I promise it's not. They took the keys from you, and no one takes the keys from you. But I let them think I was happy to play with them. My bracelets came off and I ripped them to pieces. I went for the one in the back first, drove my fingers into some of the holes on his face and squeezed. This scared the others because now I was in front of the door, just like you showed me. They already used their booms on you, so they just went click, and that's when you started to hear them screaming. All we wanted to do was help. I said, "I told you to fuck off," and grabbed the closest one to me by their wrists and pulled. I felt the bones pop and I felt the skin start to stretch as his clothes rip at the shoulder. That's when one of them started to scream. One of them started to fight, and one of them started to run. So many lessons that you've taught me so well. I ripped off the arm and threw it at the runner. The fighter was so puny he cried as he punched and punched, telling me to let go of his friend like a baby. So I crushed him with his friend over and over and over until they were both wet and soft. I like it when they get wet and soft. The runner got up again, so I threw his soft friend at him. It hit him like one of those hot towels you throw on me when I wasn't being good. You would have been so proud of me, Master. So funny how he got sick. I told him like you tell me, "Don't be a bitch." But he just started crying. I didn't even hurt him yet, and he started crying. I call him a baby and smashed him into the ground. I make him wet and soft like the others. The one that was screaming thought I forgot about him, and he tried to hide under my blanket. I wrapped him up in the blanket and yelled, "You are only supposed to look at the blanket. No one told you to fucking touch it." He ended up flying out the window. I'm sorry, Master. I promise it wasn't me. You know I'd never throw anything out of the window, Master. He got stuck on the gate, by the way. I didn't think he'd jump so far. You're going to be so proud of me, Master. Master, why did you stop breathing? I filled all the holes. Do I need to fill you with air too, like on the TV? I can do that. but I might break you like the last time I tried to help. You were so mad at me. I'm sorry, Master. Oh, Master, I hear the bad sounds coming. Maybe the men in black can help. I'll just continue to lay right here, next to you, until they get here. I promise, Master. Drawer, chair, posted by Bloody Spaghetti. My housemate is a haunted rocking chair. His name is Axel Bloodwood. He feels Scandinavian to me. I named him that after finding out he's actually something ghastly living in a rocking chair. He seems to approve of his use of physical language, rocking approvingly at the sound of his name. Axel is a rocking chair made up of wood and leather with some really nice padding and a goat's skull headrest, horns included. Its armrests end with skeletal hands. Grey fur covers the seat and the armrests. The leather is a pristine black and the wood is a beautiful shade of olive, with the rockers being dotted in a reddish tint. The previous owner left him in the house when I brought it. He took everything else but the chair, claiming there was something off about it. Took me a while to realise the chair was, in fact, autonomous, even sentient to an extent. I remember thinking I'm imagining it rock on its own during my first night in the house. Over time, I've seen some oddities in him. For starters, I think it teleports to me whenever it feels I need a rest. I pass out from time to time, somewhere without noticing, and end up waking in the chair. It is quite comfortable, so I never really questioned how I ended up in the chair. Another odd thing I should have suspected about it was the fact that it sings. The chair sings. Well, not literally. He rocks itself back and forth in a certain way that produces this really pleasant scraping and rubbing noises as it rockers grind against the floor. At first I thought it might be coming from one of my neighbours or something because of how faint it sounds. The chair doesn't move on its own or do anything strange when I'm not alone, so no one's ever seen the chair display its personality. The other thing I should have suspected is the strange liking I took to it the moment I saw it. There were almost sparks the moment I laid my eyes on the chair, as it stood in the corner of the otherwise empty room. Its black leather and olive frame had contrasted sharply and beautifully against the white walls. It was then that I realised I like this chair, and the chair likes me too. So much so that it apprehended an intruder into the house on its own and cleaned up the mess too. Whoever took up residence in that chair, I salute you. You are a perfect housemate. I woke up one night feeling strangely cold in the middle of summer. It was so cold, the hairs on my body stood up and I was shivering. Running my hands across my body, I heard a faint moan. I opened my eyes and there was nothing there. Thankfully, The sound of choking and grunting echoed behind the bedroom walls. My body stiffened, and my heart and mind started racing. I fixated my gaze on the door, hoping to be stuck in a nightmare or sleep paralysis, or something that was not someone or something breaking into my house. Yet everything felt incredibly real, and I felt perfectly lucid. When the door started slowly opening, I thought I was going to piss myself with fear as the wood creaked eerily, contrasting the night's silence. These couple of moments felt like an eternity as I stared at the ever-widening gap forming in my doorframe. A thick cloud of black smoke wiggled its way into my room. It danced and swayed in space as it grew and expanded. I stared at it helplessly, hoping to wake up from the terrible night terror. The smoke slowly took on a shape of a person. The figure grew larger and drew closer to me, appearing a massive shadow looming over my own diminishing form. In those moments, I wasn't paralyzed per se. I could feel my body, but fear had taken over my mind, pinning me in place. I stared at the shadowy thing as it ballooned over my bed before slamming into it with its entire weight and disappearing into the nothingness. My bed and body trembled under the impact. I laid there for a few moments, trying to make sense of it all. A slither of light spilling through the doorframe interrupted my train of thought into the hall. A high-pitched scream followed the light pollution. It put me into overdrive, and I got out of bed and bolted towards the source of the light without a thought, singly focused on the unknown that had jolted me awake. I stopped only when I saw the mess in my kitchen, the light blinding me, and the screams of the masked man pinned to the wall didn't make the situation any easier. What was pinning him to the wall shocked me the most. It was the rocking chair. It stood unfolded on two of its wooden legs, taking the shape of a grotesque praying mantis made up of fur, wood and leather. The masked man was screaming incomprehensible words as the rockers sunk deeper into his chest. Its wooden arches functioned like a raptural legs of a mantis. The goat's headrest turned to me and almost smiled before turning back to the masked man and groaning at him. His screams started turning into ever-weakening gargling noises. The scenery was disturbing enough to make my head spin, especially because the man seemed to shrink and shrivel right before my eyes. His cries grew hoarser and eventually fainter before I could even comprehend what was going on. The man was nothing but a layer of dried skin, and a half a second later he was nothing but a shimmering flicker of reddish rainfall that disappeared right before my eyes. I felt really dizzy, and the next thing I know is that I'm sitting in the chair that was rocking me. For me, trying to process what I had just seen and how it even got into the kitchen. I looked at the chair, I studied it. Mostly it looked just like before, but there was one exception. Its rockers had red dots all over them. Blood red dots. The ghost in the chair absorbed the blood into its current furniture of body. Sometimes it makes me wonder, how did it get the rest of its unique features? Books are no substitute for reality. Posted by CU Cthulane 17. My favourite cereal as a child was Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Like a lot of kids, I just really liked sugar. I haven't eaten it in almost 10 years. Maybe I don't want to revisit it. Some things that you liked as a kid age with you. Like Looney Tunes, I watch it today and feel bad for the coyote. As a kid, I just thought it was funny, seeing him fall off a cliff over and over again. Lately, I've been watching retrospectives on Saturday morning cartoons on YouTube. Those aren't a thing anymore, but for some curious reason I found myself at the library one Friday afternoon reading old Goosebumps books. I was really into those for about 2 years in elementary school. Footsteps approached as I sat at the table with a stack of books. I could see 2 blue sneakers in my periphery, but did not look up right away. Whoever it was clearly looking at me. "Hi friend," said an unfamiliar voice. I looked up and saw a man wearing black jeans that there were a few inches too long for him, and a black button-down shirt. He was skinny and had dishevelled hair. He pointed to my books. "They just given you, goosebumps?" He smiled as if that was a joke. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice low. "Do I know you?" The library was not very full, but there were still a few people in here. The way that librarians look at me disapprovingly when I make too much noise always makes me feel like a first grader who just wet himself in class. Instead of answering, the man sat down across from me, grabbed a book off the stack. "This is a good one," he said, holding its cover up to me. The book was Phantom of the Auditorium, which is one of the better ones. Before I could say anything, the man put Phantom down and grabbed another one. This one was How I Learned to Fly, which is really good but not scary at all. "I didn't like this one," he said, and tossed it aside. He was not keeping his voice down, yet no one else seemed to notice him. I glanced at the librarian, who was typing something intently and not looking in our direction. "What are you doing?" I said, my volume slightly higher. "I don't know." He grabbed my wrist and squeezed so hard I dropped the book I was holding. It was Monster Blood, which is not as good. "Miss Phelps' physics class," he said in a whisper. "Senior year." I sat to your right. We had PE together too. You were really good at dodgeball. I tried to pull free from his grip, but he held on very tight. It was early afternoon and the sun was shining through the windows that went from the floor to ceiling. After this, I was going to go get lunch at the Russian cafe down the street. I have high standards for all things Russian. "What do you want?" I said. I tried to relax, but pain making it almost impossible to think about anything else. The intensity of his grip might have even been enough to cut off circulation to my hand. "Do you remember me?" he asked. I did, and I didn't. His name was Morgan Forrester, but I'm in my 20s. This guy looked exactly like the guy I went to high school with, but was at least 15 years too old. There was grey in his hair and a few wrinkles on his face. I guessed him to be in his 40s. Maybe he was Morgan's father. But how would Morgan's father know who his son sat next to in physics class nearly 10 years ago? Morgan, or whoever he was, let go of me. I rubbed my wrist and eyed him warily. "Yes, I remember you," I said. That was a lie. Or was it? The man grabbed one of the books off the table, stood up and turned around. He raised the book as if doing a magic trick with it, but instead of making it disappear, he tore the pages out by the fistful. Nobody looked up. I watched in astonishment. Could none of them see him? I've met people who are drunk on their own power before. Perhaps they could see him, but knew that he did not want them to look up. How he compelled them to obey, I do not know. The man who called himself Morgan threw the remains of the book aside and grabbed another one. I grabbed his wrist with both hands and barely managed to restrain him from holding it up and tearing it to pieces. He slapped me with his other hand so hard that I fell over. The librarian looked up. I stood up, my ears ringing. Morgan circled the table and stood in front of me. He grabbed me by both wrists and pulled me closer to him. I swore I'd seen that move in a TV show about domestic abuse once. "What is this about?" My volume was normal now. The librarian stood up and approached. "I never picked on you," I said. "You didn't pick on anyone," he said. "You just sat there all day with your nose buried in some book." He was right about that. I was a total bookworm in high school. In college I realised that reading books was my way of keeping people at arm's length. I could relate to the problems of fictional people, but not real ones. These days I read mostly philosophy and self-help, but I don't read as much anymore. I don't think I need to. "Sir," said the librarian, "you need to keep your voice down. If you can't do that, I will have to ask you to leave." She was standing 5 feet away, but never once looked at Morgan, her eyes focused on me. Even if she was only pretending to not to be able to see him, she was doing an excellent job. Morgan squeezed my wrists so hard I thought they would break. I cried out, then stifled it. The librarian watched, impassive. "Apologise to her," said Morgan. For a second I imagined him breaking my wrists. My girlfriend would have to wipe my butt for weeks. As a trauma nurse, she's probably had to deal with stuff way worse than that. "I'm sorry," I said, then realised that I didn't mean it. "It's just that, you see, well, I fucking hate books." I headbutted Morgan. He let go of me, probably more out of surprise than pain. I turned to the librarian. "Can you see him?" I asked. She didn't look at me or say anything at all. I waved a hand in front of her face. She blinked, but still did not say anything. I looked at Morgan, who was blinking like someone had thrown sand in his eyes. I must have hit his nose. My head throbbed. Headbutting is a little like punching someone in the face, in that it hurts you almost as much as it hurts them. I never left, said Morgan. I didn't graduate. I got older, but never left. I was a janitor. Then I was a teacher. Last week they fired me. I went out to see if it's happened to anyone else. But here you are, living your life like normal. You aged at the right speed. Why did the school do that to me? I couldn't leave. Some people, they graduate but can't move on. I couldn't leave. I tried to go somewhere and then I'm right back in the teacher's lounge. I slept in the basement like a homeless person. Everyone forgot about me, my family and friends. What the fuck? It's because you didn't really want to leave until now, said the librarian. She was looking at Morgan. She could see him after all. Your friend liked books, but not like you did. You spent all your time in the library, but you kept rereading the same books over and over, even when it got boring. Not to learn anything, just to escape. Morgan stared at her. You worked there? He said. I don't remember you. I work at a lot of libraries, said the librarian. Nobody ever pays attention to me except when they need something. Now that I thought about it, she seemed generic. Everything about her, from the oversized glasses to the mom jeans and shoulder length, sandy blonde hair, looked like exactly what I picture when I hear the word librarian. There was nothing distinctive about her at all. Her face had wrinkles in it, but they seemed painted on by a makeup artist. She advanced on Morgan. He looked younger now. His wrinkles had disappeared, but there was still grey in his hair. I watch everyone, said the librarian. I know who's here to learn something and who's here just because they hate the outside world. You thought your life was bad because your mum died and your dad treated you like shit. So you wrote in your journal that everyone was mean to you and you were going to kill everyone. You were never going to actually do it, but you fantasized that somebody would find that journal and try to talk you out of doing it, because that way you could feel persecuted without having to actually do something bad. You suck, Morgan. You can't even fail right. Morgan looked young. The grey in his hair had disappeared. He looked younger than I did now, like he was back in high school. My parents got divorced when I was 16. It fucked me up, but I don't know if it's what caused me to withdraw into books. Maybe I had been looking for an excuse to shut myself off from people, and having divorced parents was upsetting, but not exactly traumatic. Morgan, though, I barely remembered him. He had seemed nice enough, more confident around girls than I was. I guess he had a dark side, just one buried so deep that even he didn't know about it. The librarian grabbed Morgan's wrists and pulled him close, just like he had done with me. She was very strong for a middle-aged woman. He looked terrified. What are you going to do to me? He said. She let go of his wrists, though was not facing me. I could swear that she was smiling. She grabbed his ear. I am going to tell your mother about you, she said. She marched away, dragging him behind her. Nobody in the library looked up. Maybe they were just really engrossed in their own books. Morgan and the librarian left out the emergency exit. No alarm sounded, at least not that I could hear. A few minutes later, the librarian re-entered through the emergency exit. She approached the table where I had been sitting and looked at the torn book on the ground. What happened here? She said. I'm sorry, I said. I'll pay for it. I asked what happened. She said, her tone a bit colder. I guess I wanted to see if something that I liked as a kid was still good, I said. And is it? Not really, I said. It's always like that, isn't it? She said, and walked away. I threw the remnants of the book away, put the rest back on the shelf and left. Since then I have not felt the need to revisit Goosebumps. Maybe I'll try another author who I liked at that age. Maybe not. I visited my school's website when I got home just to see if Morgan was mentioned there. The staff page said that he had been teaching algebra there for a few years now. In his photo, he looked like a man in his 20s. Was it just me, or was there something dead in his eyes and forced about his smile? He was the correct age again, yet something told me he was just trapped. As someone who literally couldn't leave the school, I wondered if I should try to find him on social media. Ultimately, I decided against it. I'm not the person I was in high school, but some things never change. I thought of that while eating at the Russian cafe. For some reason, food always helps me understand. That's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thank you for listening. If you liked these scary stories, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.